Copyright disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Non-profit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. Islam, Islam, Islam. We are here for 30 minutes more or less. I am Sister Tahita S. Najiola of CalifaMedia.com, MercyCharities.org, and most recently, RiseOfTheMoors.org. In this installment of Moorish Mental, I will share some thoughts and present evidence in support of why, Allah willing, the colonists will be comforted in what should reasonably be their urge to leave the Americas in light of events since 2020, the year 2020. In light of the opioid and now the Fenty crisis, the rise in transgenderism and homosexuality, and the corresponding dip in birth rate, dinks, dual income, no kids, which also contributes to the declining birth rate. And now all these natural catastrophes that actually and for real are sweeping them off the land. They need to seriously acknowledge that these lands are trying to vomit them out, just like the lands of their former colonies. But before we delve into justifying the fall and exodus of Rome and all those complicit in their crimes, a few announcements. Alright, so the first announcement is the Moorish Mommy Sunday Brunch. In case you haven't heard, due to scheduling conflicts, my own, because work is piling up and I have many pressing issues that I really need to attend to, Moorish Mommy Sunday Brunch is moving from a meeting to a series. So that way, anyone who might not have been able to attend the meeting, due to lack of time, or they were just like born or whatever when it happened, they'll be able to access it at a later date. Also, Moorish Meetup. This, I guess, is turning into a thing. Allah willing, it is turning into a thing. Moorish Meetup. The first one was a collaboration where Califa Media kind of found itself involved in a love, truth, peace, freedom, justice tour stop with Canaan Land Moors. Moors showed up, Moors showed out, Moors had a great time, so great that they were asking when is the next one. The next one is this upcoming November 15th through November 17th, 2024 in and around Snellville, Georgia, which is outside of Atlanta, Georgia. It's not too far away, okay? So that information, details about that event is available at riseofthemoors.org/meetup, MEETUP. All right, next is we have a new book out. Welcome to the latest Califa Media family member, Polygyny More Wet. It's a book of guidelines, rules, structure, foundations to build polygynous families. But it's not just for polygynous people. It's for anybody who's like basically trying to engage in the first level of nation building, which is establishing a family. It has rules for the men. It has rules for the women. All right. So it's not just for people who want multiple mates. It's also for people who want singular mates. All right. And finally, we have new Moorish merch. Now in store at CalifaMedia.com/storefront, one word, we have available, just arrived, an enamel Moorish American pin, the turban pin, that can also be worn on your lapel. It's 1 inch wide, it's 1 inch circumference, because it's a circle, made of soft enamel and of amazing quality, because Allah guided me to an honorable, reasonably priced, and extremely talented artisan in China who cranks out excellent work. So if you have any of our pins, it's the same company. And yeah, that's on CalifaMedia.com, so check it out. Islam. Before we begin, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe so that this may be spread widely, if for no other reason than to assure like minds they are joyfully not so unique in this particular opinion. Why they should be encouraged to lead. And by they, I mean non-Moorish Americans or even just non-Americans. Like, you have a country, you call it a boat, you call it a flight. You're the they that I'm referring to. So, foreigners should be encouraged to return to their mother's lands, taking with them the freedoms they've become accustomed to during their occupation of the Americas. We can see this benefit played out in the U.S. by the pre-constitutional colonists, wherein they had become so used to being able to do and move as they liked without the burdens placed on them by feudal lords. It directly led to their war, nay, their demand to be independent and live free on someone else's land. Now that they've perfected this entitlement, it's high time they return to their own lands of origin and free their brethren and sisterns of their actual nations. To those who insist that a construct such as the United States is necessary to act as a sort of planetary oasis, I agree. And since we've, the rightful, by birthright, rulers and possessors of the lands known as America, since we've had our lands usurped and compelled to take part in the so-called American project in order to survive, if it's such a great idea, it's your turn. Let's designate a portion of someone else's land to be eminent domain for the sake of world unity. Whatever your disagreement with that idea, the indigenous see and know why you wouldn't want your homeland disgraced in such a manner. Noble Drew Ali said that his message is for the nations. Who better to teach the nations than their own people? The misnomered Egyptians didn't teach the Greeks directly. They did it vicariously through the few Greeks they taught and sent back home to their people. The nations have lived among the Moors long enough. If they haven't learned mercy, love, and right by now, there's no hope for them, and they need to leave, because that's hazardous to our nation in healing. Why, in my opinion, they need to leave. Again, they being if you're not a Moorish American, or you had to get on a boat or a flight to get over here, and you're not from here. I've long held the opinion that patriots stay home. The scumbags come to America. Either they are running from a crime or running to commit a crime. That asylum thing is a load of garbage, because there are at least 100 other countries around the world and numerous they have to pass through to get to the United States they could so-called escape to. And usually it's for one of two reasons. Either the opportunity to exploit a land not their own, or to escape generational oppression, usually inflicted upon the entire populace by an unscrupulous, undeserving, hereditary aristocracy. The majority admit they invade our Moorish lands for so-called opportunity. If your arrival was not preceded by the approval of a Moorish Science Temple of America, then you are here seeking the opportunity to steal. The interaction between the Moors and the foreigners can be seen like that of a prince in disguise among the public. Will they act cordially because they assume they're before an aristocrat, or prove their insincerity by acting cruelly to what they presume to be a peasant? These invaders have demonstrated most thoroughly what we can expect from them once we regain our rightful place. Where is the first place when they get here? Where's the first place they set up shop, the first place they cast judgment, and the last place they give back to after reaping their ill-gotten profits? They have earned the opportunity to return home voluntarily versus being forced to do so. I'm of the opinion Their occupational paperwork granting their safe passage on these lands should now exile them and their descendants for all of time, as the fruit is only as good as the tree it comes from. Turnabout as fair play, or there must be balance. Moors occupied Spain for nearly 800 years and weren't able to claim the right to remain as they had been there long enough. Fair is fair, and we won't even do you the way the Moors were done when they were invited to leave. I suggest those who refuse to leave or can't leave should be allowed to remain, only under the condition that they adhere to Isaiah chapter 14 verse 2 of the Bible. But most of us are aware that the majority of these invaders on our lands would rather leave or die than submit to those rightful heirs that they see as being beneath them. And this goes for all invaders. If we Moors at this exact moment can't operate in your homeland as you do in ours, it's time for you to leave. I can't set up a little Morocco in China, can I? I can't set one up in Saudi Arabia. I can't set one up in India. So you can't set one up here. All right? That's just me. All right? You're a scumbag, thieving opportunist. The Moors are well studied at this point and know full well that while the palefaces may have erased our history from our memories, they weren't able to do the same in other nations. You likely knew full well who we were before you arrived. And now that we have seen the truth of your criminal character, we, with good reason, would be well advised against having you remain among us. You've proven you don't deserve such an honor. Along these lines, it would be in the indigenous Moors' interest to insist that the pale-skinned modern European and the children of their daughters vacate our lands as soon as we are able to get them off of it. The entire planet has numerous justifiable bones to pick with these people, and I, for one, have no interest in myself or my children having any of their just desserts splashed on us. It's not a matter of selfishness, it's a matter of self-preservation. The other nations have shown us what we can expect more of from them, or worse, what our children can expect from theirs. They've had all this time to act humane on a land they knew wasn't theirs, and to date, for the most part, still choose to act with hate and cruelty. I speak in generalities, as I am well aware. If there are exceptions to the rule, then it's not a rule. But in general, every nation on earth has made its way to the Americas to exploit it. Again, think about what the majority of migrants or their descendants say as to why they wound up over here. Opportunity. Opportunity to do what? Rob, steal, and share in the booty of the colonists. Or better conditions, right? Why not improve the conditions of your own homeland? No, rather than clean your own home, you'd rather crash my pad and mooch off my resources while calling me out of my name, helping the colonists keep my birthright captive in exchange for your slice of my American pie. It wouldn't be their first time. This isn't my issue, what I'm about to go into, but here's what I've observed. Allah willing, those who will soon need this knowledge will make good use of it. The following is a discussion I had with Claude AI on the history of post-occupational colonialism. What term is used to refer to colonists who return to their original countries after their colony is nationalized by the original people?
The term typically used to refer to colonists who return to their country of origin after the colony they were living in gains independence is repatriates. Repatriation is the process of returning to one's country of origin or citizenship. This can occur when colonial rule ends and the colony becomes an independent nation, often as part of a decolonization process. In some cases, the former colonists may choose to leave or may be forced to leave the newly independent nation, especially if they are viewed as symbols of the former colonial power. Some notable examples of repatriation in history include the pieds noirs, literally black feet, French colonists who returned to France after Algeria gained independence in 1962. Portuguese colonists who returned to Portugal from Angola and Mozambique following their independence in 1975. British colonists who left India after it gained independence in 1947, often referred to as Anglo-Indians. The experience of repatriation can be challenging, as repatriates may face difficulties integrating into their country of origin after spending significant time abroad, and they may have complex feelings about the loss of their former home and way of life in the colony.
Can you provide other examples of repatriation since and including the fall of the Moors in Spain in the 15th century?
Certainly. Here are several more examples of repatriation from the 15th century onwards. Moors in Spain, 15th century. After the fall of the last Muslim kingdom in Granada in 1492, many Moors, Muslim inhabitants of the Iberian Peninsula, were forced to convert to Christianity or face expulsion. Some Moors chose to leave Spain and return to North Africa. Loyalists during the American Revolution, 18th century. During and after the American Revolutionary War, many colonists who remained loyal to the British Crown, known as Loyalists or Tories, were forced to leave the newly independent United States. Many of these loyalists repatriated to other parts of the British Empire, such as Canada, England, and the Caribbean. French colonists in Vietnam, 20th century. After the Geneva Accords of 1954, which ended French colonial rule in Vietnam, many French colonists and Vietnamese who had collaborated with the French administration left the country and repatriated to France. Europeans in African colonies, mid-20th century. As various African nations gained independence from European colonial powers in the 1950s and 1960s, many European colonists chose to repatriate to their countries of origin, such as the British from Kenya and the Belgians from the Congo. East African Asians in Uganda, 1972. Under the rule of Idi Amin, Uganda expelled its Asian minority population, many of whom held British passports. This led to a mass repatriation of around 27,000 Ugandan Asians to the United Kingdom. Hong Kong residents, late 20th century. In the years leading up to the 1997 handover of Hong Kong from British to Chinese rule, some Hong Kong residents chose to repatriate to other countries, such as the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia, due to concerns about the future of the territory under Chinese sovereignty. These examples demonstrate that repatriation has occurred in various contexts throughout history, often as a result of significant political, social, or economic changes in the regions where colonists or settlers were living.
Can you expand on the examples of repatriation from African colonies? And where possible, can you provide the number of people who fled along with the time frame, i.e. 6,000 colonists repatriated within 3 months?
Sure, I can provide more details on the repatriation of Europeans from African colonies during the mid-20th century decolonization period. Please note that exact numbers and timeframes may vary depending on the source and the specific context of each country. 1. Algeria, 1962. After Algeria gained independence from France in 1962, around 900,000 European settlers, known as Pieds Noirs, repatriated to France within a few months. The mass exodus was triggered by the Algerian War of Independence and the Evian Accords, which ended French rule in the country. 2. Kenya, 1963 to 1964. During the early 1960s, as Kenya moved towards independence from British colonial rule, many European settlers sold their farms and businesses. Around 30,000 British colonists left Kenya within a year of independence, which was granted in December 1963. 3. Congo, 1960 to 1961. Following the independence of the Belgian Congo, now the Democratic Republic of the Congo, in June 1960, political instability and violence against Europeans led to a rapid exodus of Belgian colonists. Approximately 80,000 to 100,000 Belgians repatriated within a year of independence. 4. Angola, 1975. After Angola gained independence from Portugal in November 1975, a civil war erupted, leading to the mass exodus of Portuguese settlers. Around 300,000 to 500,000 Portuguese colonists fled Angola, mostly within a few months of independence. 5. Mozambique, 1975. Similar to Angola, Mozambique's independence from Portugal in June 1975 led to the repatriation of around 250,000 Portuguese settlers within a short period, as they feared political instability and discrimination in the newly independent nation. 6. Rhodesia/Zimbabwe, 1980. In the years leading up to and following the independence of Zimbabwe, formerly Rhodesia, in April 1980, a significant number of white Rhodesians left the country. Approximately 100,000 to 200,000 white Rhodesians repatriated to countries such as South Africa, the United Kingdom, and Australia over several years. These examples illustrate the significant and often rapid repatriation of European colonists from various African countries during the decolonization era of the mid-20th century. The exact numbers and timeframes may differ slightly based on the historical sources consulted.
Is there any information available on how many colonists fled South Africa after the original people gained control?
The situation in South Africa differs from other African countries due to the unique nature of its transition from apartheid to majority rule. The process was more gradual and did not result in a sudden, large-scale exodus of white South Africans. After the end of apartheid in 1994, when the African National Congress, ANC, came to power under the leadership of Nelson Mandela, there was no mass repatriation of white South Africans. Many chose to stay in the country, although some did emigrate over the following years. However, since the end of apartheid, there has been a steady emigration of white South Africans, often referred to as the brain drain. Reasons for this emigration include concerns about crime, political instability, economic uncertainty, and perceptions of limited opportunities for white South Africans in post-apartheid South Africa. Estimates of the number of white South Africans who have emigrated since 1994 vary. 1. Between 1995 and 2005, approximately 550,000 South Africans emigrated, according to the South African Institute of Race Relations. The majority of these emigrants were highly skilled professionals, and a significant proportion were white. 2. A 2009 study by the University of Cape Town estimated that approximately 800,000 white South Africans had left the country since 1995. 3. In 2011, the South African Institute of Race Relations estimated that around 800,000 whites had left South Africa since 1996. It is important to note that these emigrations occurred over an extended period, years to decades, and were not a sudden, concentrated repatriation like those seen in other African countries during decolonization. Additionally, the emigration of white South Africans has been offset to some extent by immigration, both from other African countries and from overseas.
Can you provide the same numbers for the decolonization of Southeast Asia?
Certainly. Here are some examples of repatriation during the decolonization of Southeast Asian countries. 1. Vietnam, 1954 to 1956. After the Geneva Accords of 1954, which ended French colonial rule in Vietnam, approximately 800,000 to 1 million Vietnamese, mainly Catholics and those associated with the French administration, migrated from North to South Vietnam. During the same period, around 100,000 French civilians and military personnel were repatriated to France. 2. Indonesia, 1945 to 1949. Following Indonesia's declaration of independence from the Netherlands in August 1945, a 4-year struggle ensued until the Dutch formally recognized Indonesia's independence in December 1949. During this period and the subsequent years, approximately 300,000 Dutch and Indo-European, mixed Dutch and Indonesian ancestry, people repatriated to the Netherlands. 3. Cambodia, 1953 to 1970s. Cambodia gained independence from France in November 1953. Over the following years, particularly during the Cambodian Civil War, 1967 to 1975, and the Khmer Rouge regime, 1975 to 1979, many French and other foreign nationals left the country. Exact numbers are difficult to determine, but it is estimated that several thousand French citizens were repatriated during this period. 4. Laos, 1953 to 1975. Laos gained independence from France in October 1953. During the subsequent Laotian Civil War, 1953 to 1975, many French and other foreign nationals left the country. Precise figures are not readily available, but it is estimated that several thousand French citizens were repatriated during this time. 5. Malaysia, 1957 to 1963. Malaya gained independence from the British Empire in August 1957, and in September 1963, it was reconstituted as Malaysia with the addition of Singapore, North Borneo, Sabah, and Sarawak. In the years following independence, a number of British colonists and civil servants left Malaysia, but the repatriation was more gradual compared to other Southeast Asian countries. Exact figures are not easily obtainable, but the number of British repatriates was likely in the thousands. Please note that the numbers provided are estimates based on available historical sources and may vary depending on the source consulted.
What sources are you using? Please list them all.
I apologize for not providing the sources earlier. As an AI language model, I don't have access to a physical library or the ability to browse the internet in real time. My responses are generated based on the vast amount of text data I was trained on, which includes books, articles, and other reliable sources up until 2021.
All right, in conclusion, thank you for your consideration and attention. While this may have been yet another frustrated rant, I did my best to keep it grounded in historical fact and cited sources where available that can be easily researched and verified. Allah willing, I'll be focusing my attention on juxtaposing the events going on in Palestine at the time of this recording with those in the Americas, and how I think, me personally, I think it's a litmus test on how these colonists are going to try to deal with the put-upons that are still crawling across our lands. And as I've said before, a whole lot of people are getting ready to try to identify with and as us, Moorish Americans. So I'm of the opinion that we need to prepare ourselves to check these frauds to stop the continued theft of our Moorish birthrights. With that, Islam, peace and love, and be cool, y'all.